This is chapter 1 from my novel, Stephen Dearsley's Summer of Love. And I won't introduce it, I shall just begin it. In the summer of 1967, 3 naked young men took a shower in a fountain in the centre of Brighton. It was hot and good-humoured mischief. It was hot and good-humoured mischief was in the air. The bus that circled the dolphin-ornamented fountain gave its passengers an uncensored view of the fun. Hilarity competed with outrage. All eyes focused in unison on the same, usually hidden, body parts. Almost oblivious to the drama, but not quite, one young man was intent on other matters. He was still rolling his ticket into a perfect cylinder as he got up from his seat at the front of the top deck. He was on his way to the library. Stephen Dearsley, no older than the fountain invaders, had a better excuse for public nudity than the frolicking, loose-limbed bodies that were dancing in the water. Grey nylon socks stuck to his swelling feet that he refused to let escape from his tightly laced black shoes. Cavalry twill trousers, old-fashioned by a generation, a woolen maroon shirt, and a thick brown corduroy jacket. This was his usual look, and he wouldn't change it just because of the weather. His outfit contrasted vividly with the disposable summer chic all around him, and in the case of those young naked lads, clothes, chic or unchic, had been discarded altogether. The tightly knotted brown tie was his final and most aggressively unseasonable fashion statement. Stephen disliked the whole idea of summer clothing. He disapproved of seasonal sartorial changes just as much as he hated the idea of fashion itself. Clothes were clothes, that's all. A human uniform distinguishing us from other mammals. Uncomfortably hot, he hurried on his way, shy, confused, and disorientated. The dark green and yellow wall tiles and faded grey marble floor of the library's entrance hall felt better to him than any cooling shower. He felt safe with both sun and noise locked out as he climbed the ironclad staircase to the reference library, his sweat turning refreshingly cold on his back. The 19th century building that now housed the public library, art gallery and reference library was Stephen's daily destination. Originally serving some frivolous function concerning the Prince of Wales's horses, it had now settled into dignified municipal respectability. No mop could bring a shine to its faded splendour, but that made it all the more attractive to Stephen, who delighted in the quiet, understated values of decay. This was his natural habitat. Maybe that was not altogether true, There was just one minor problem here: people. Of the 3 departments, the public library was just much too busy, and the art gallery was even worse now that it had become fashionable, with exhibitions designed for art students and the much too fashion-conscious elite of Brighton's bright new intelligentsia. Both departments, on occasion, and to Stephen's irritation, attracted people in from the street. Not silent, unassuming loners like Stephen, who respected this mausoleum, but people just like the ones he had escaped from out there in the sunshine, lively, laughing, happy folk looking for fun. No, for Stephen, his search for the perfect environment had driven him up the staircase to the reference library. Antique books, encyclopedias, gazetteers, and brown box files full of yellowing newspapers were crammed onto shelves reaching up to the ceiling. Porcelain-shaded lamps hung from unpolished chains, their off-white bowls dimmed by the dark shadows of fossilized insects. Beneath them, filling the room, were long oak tables, book-laden and solid, attended by wooden chairs with well-worn maroon leather upholstery. Stephen was by far the youngest of the regular visitors to this, his sanctuary. Dusty amateur academics, probably retired schoolmasters, came here to research books that they had never had time to write during their working lives. They planned to record the minutiae of a way of life that was already dying around them by reading the complete works of forgotten Edwardian poets and searching through back numbers of local publications long out of date. Elderly people came here for somewhere to sit, to read the newspapers without having to buy them, and for an excuse to leave their musty bed-sitting rooms. It was a favourite place for respectable vagrants. The reference library preserved fading ideals, battered pride, and precariously held self-esteem. No one spoke here, so illusions flourished in the silence. Stephen had an unformulated affection for these familiar people. He was 24, of medium height, medium build, pale, with black-rimmed glasses and well-clipped, thick and strikingly dark hair. Unbeknown to himself, he possessed natural good looks, what his elderly relations would call bone structure, and, superficially at least, he was more than a little like Buddy Holly, even if he had never heard of that dead American singer. The product of a rather incompetent private school, he had flunked his exams so badly that his university ambitions had been thwarted, and he had lost the little confidence that he had possessed as a child. He suffered from malaise, or so one of his teachers told him, and he would never come to anything unless he took himself in hand. A long list of educational failures had depressed him, but he still retained the ambition that had haunted him since he was very young. He wanted to be a writer, but not of poetry or fiction. He had no faith in his own imagination. No, he wanted to be a biographer, a chronicler of other people's lives, a dispassionate observer. He was a quietly spoken, often silent student of history. He took a job as a waiter after school, but he had no social skills, and soon he was out of work, invisible to all but his parents, who decided to throw money at the problem. So he moved to Brighton from his childhood village in Kent, and for 3 years now he had been coming to the reference library, where he continued his education in isolated dedication, surviving on a small allowance from his bewildered and disappointed parents. Stephen had found, or so he had decided, his perfect environment, his temple of fustian delights. Sitting in his usual position at one end of a long table, with the summer light barely filtering through the large dusty window at his side, unusually for him, his concentration wavered. Remembering the fun in the fountain, fleetingly and disconcertingly, he felt alone as he thumbed through a book about the metaphysical poets, his current self-imposed project. He had seen those young men, naked and free, and had been left with a mild sense of disappointment that he could never have done anything so recklessly exciting. Those thoughts distracted him from the metaphysical poets. He admired their clever play with words, but love poems weren't really his sort of thing, and literary studies discussing sensuality were even worse.